So they're just shutting up the door, so I think we'll get started. Hopefully you're all here to learn how to deploy your own project server or to get started with Project Online. My name's Chris Boyd. I'm the one with the dog, if you can't tell. I'm a senior PM manager on the project team, part of the engineering team. So we build and maintain project client, project server, and the online service. I'm approaching my 10-year anniversary on the project team, so I get a nice piece of glass in about another month from Microsoft to show off my commitment to project and project online. So I'm really happy to share all the work that we're doing, particularly on the infrastructure side of the products. I'm joined today with Nadeem Morali. He's a PM on the team. I guess you could speak about yourself.
Yeah, so I actually report to Chris, so you'll find out that I'm probably doing most of the clicking here because he can easily assign that to me. I also work on Project Online. I own security for Project. I'm relatively new. I will be getting 2 years in the summer. I'm PMP certified, and previously, before coming to Microsoft, I was a software engineering consultant, mostly doing development, project management for like the armored truck industry.
So we're going to cover three things today. So I see a lot of familiar faces. Hopefully, you guys will all get to learn something new. But we're going to set up a project server today. We're then going to do the same thing and get PWA up and running within the service, and then do some initial steps to get PWA configured and get users, ready to start using the product and forming it to its business processes.
So Chris is a Disney fanatic. He has like one of those passes where you can go as many times as you want all the time, and I believe his next trip is on Friday. He's flying to Anaheim.
Leaving from Chicago to Anaheim to Disneyland.
So you'll see a couple Disney references in our slides here. So Walt Disney said, "I always like to look on the optimistic side of life, but I am realistic enough to know that life is a complex matter." So setting up project is a journey. It has a lot of features, but it's also a complex tool. So it does take a lot of planning to get project up and running to work with your business processes, and also what business processes you may have to adjust to work with Project Server. As Chris mentioned, I will show you some of the steps to get Project Server up and running on-prem. And I just want to repeat that it does take some planning to get up and running to make it work in your organization. So just a quick survey. Are any of you here a wizard at the functionality that knows all the functionality that Project Server has to offer?
Andre?
So,
your hand goes up here. Thank you.
Quite a few of you. Okay, that's good. Who here has set up SharePoint? Okay.
Wow, almost all of you.
And how many of you have set up Project Server before? Okay, so
who's going to do the demo for us? Any takers? I'll give you a T-shirt if you do the demo. All right.
I'm going to get a T-shirt first.
Yeah, I'll give him a T-shirt.
Okay, so what do you need to get going with Project Server? So the items in the blue are basically the minimum software requirements. Project Server 2013 will install on Windows Server 2008 R2 Service Pack 1 Standard Edition. You need to have Microsoft SQL Server 2008 R2 with Service Pack 1. And Project goes on top of SharePoint 2013 Enterprise. We don't support SharePoint Foundation Server. You can't install Project on top of that. You have to have SharePoint 2013 Enterprise. The items in the green are kind of the things that, as IT pros, you'll need to take care of deploying. For the web access to Project, you need IE 8 or later, or Firefox, Chrome, or Safari. We support all the major browsers. For our Project client, We support, you need Windows 7 or later, so we support Windows 8 and the upcoming Windows 10. Some of the optional things you can install to get a better project server experience would be Exchange. Exchange would give you some features like SharePoint task integration. You can use Outlook to actually see your project tasks. And you can also look at your calendar syncs, basically. So if you want to assign a task to somebody, you'll know that they've currently set an out of office message and they're basically not going to get around to doing it right away. TechNet is where all the information is there it's all the latest information is on TechNet. So if any of the requirements change, or if you have any other questions or want to know how to do something, our TechNet articles are actually pretty good and fairly up to date. It's also the latest source of truth. If I contradict anything that TechNet says, TechNet wins. So if you want to use a later version of Windows, so 2012 R2, you have to also update to you would have to install SharePoint and Project Server, Service Pack 1. And just on the client side, you can also use Project Pro for Office 365. So that's the Office 365 offering of Project Professional. So topology. Project Server basically has three-tiered architecture. We have the web tier, the application tier, and a SQL Server tier. So when you're developing or wanting to test out different features, you can basically set up a one-box solution. It could also be a VM. It could be in Azure. And basically, you would install all three tiers on one box, and that gives you the ability to develop, test, mess around without affecting any other environment. We highly recommend that you set up multiple environments, like a development environment, a testing environment, a staging environment, before you roll out any of your changes into production. In Project Server 2010, the recommended layout was to install the web application and the application servers on the same box, same set of boxes, and run a separate box for SQL Server. This differed from what SharePoint had recommended. We didn't align to SharePoint's recommended topology. However, in 2013, with all the work of the service, we now support the same three-tiered architecture that SharePoint supports and recommends, and this gives you the best option for scaling out. The reason why we closer match to SharePoint, essentially, is that when we shipped Project Server 2013, just to keep it simple, we basically, I don't know if this ages me, we basically printed to a CD and sent it out, and the other copy of it went right to our data center, and that became Project Online, the first offering. Since then, there have been updates, which I'll let Chris cover. That's essentially why we closely align with SharePoint now. And just like in 2010, you have to install all the project bits on all the web tier and application tier boxes. You can't skip a box. It won't function correctly if you try to not install it everywhere. But we'll go through a high-level install of how to get SharePoint project up and running. So, let me take a step back. So this is the typical SharePoint 2013 farm. You have a number of service applications. The four that project require are the Excel, PowerPoint, Secure Store, and the State Service. And in SharePoint, you have your config database, and in this example, you have your site collection and the content database that goes with your site collection. And you could also have search running in your farm. So when we want to add Project Server to this, we'll just go over briefly what changes. The first thing is we have our own service application. This is where a bulk of the logic and our backend process runs for Project Server, including like the scheduling engine, our ability to eventing service to be able to talk to other services, and I'm missing one.
Queue.
The queue. Our queue basically, queue runs out of that as well. Next thing you're going to end up doing when you're installing project in a farm, you're going to be creating a project database. A project database is a one-to-one mapping to our PWA site, which is what you can add to an existing site. So what is PWA? So PWA is a feature that gets added to a site collection. It allows you to have a single location where you're going to allow all the resources that you want to make available to project managers exist, all your timesheet information, a whole bunch of information about custom fields, customizations to project, your workflow, and where the reporting database will exist. So all the information is actually pooled in one place, and if you think about it, that allows us to light up scenarios where you might have more than one project, and you have Bob, who's like the star developer, and you want him on your project, so you can actually try to assign him a task for, say, he starts on Monday, he's going to work on your project for 2 weeks, but I'm a project manager, and I want Bob on my task, on my project as well. So I can try to assign him work, but I can tell right away that Bob is already allocated to someone else's project. So by having all this information in one place, that gives us the ability to do resource capacity planning and resource leveling. And then when you create a project site, then a project site is a workplace where all the documents, issues, risks, documents, issues, and risks all end up for the team members to go use and add to and understand what the project's about. That's sort of the collaboration space. So whenever you create a project, we create a sub-site underneath PWA that represents that project. So in this example, for this medical site collection, right, PWA has been added, and I've gone ahead and created a project called vaccine. In 2010, you could also create a site collection which is just project. So as you can see there, the project is the root, PWA is at the very top of the site collection, and everything hangs off PWA. You can always make non-project sites hang off the PWA site. So as you can see there, trials, legal, and lab are all basic SharePoint sites. They can have document libraries, whatever you want on SharePoint. But then also, if I create a project like vaccine at the bottom, it'll show up there as well. So we support the same architecture, site collection layout as we did in 2010 as we do in 2013. But in 2013, PWA doesn't have to be the root if you don't want it to be. So I'm going to go through a quick demo of how to set up Project Server. So the first step is to install the bits on all the SharePoint servers. I'm skipping that step. It involves clicking several times and entering in a serial number. Hopefully we're all familiar with doing that. So in our farm, if I bring up SQL Server, you'll see a bunch of databases that all involve SharePoint out of the box, depending on what services you have configured. And then we have our SharePoint site collection, the main content database that's holding my site collection. And I'll just bring up my site collection so you guys know I'm not making everything up. So there's my medical research site collection. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my single box, which has all 3 tiers on, which I want all 3 tiers on it. I want to make it turn project on in the tier. So go to Application Management, Manage Services on Server. So this is the current server. My server is called Project Ignite, but I could turn on the application server wherever I want, and that represents my application tier. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the Project Server Application Service. So doing this, when SharePoint says it's finished working on it, I've now turned my box into an application tier. So the next thing I need to do is create a project service application. So as I mentioned earlier, the service application is kind of the project backend. As I said, it takes care of scheduling, eventing, which is the ability to call other places or run custom code, and it takes care of the queue. So I'm going to create a new one, project service application. So make sure I got the naming down. So the application name, I'm going to call it project. You can give it a pool name. It's recommended you give it a separate pool name, as this gives it its dedicated set of resources. Project, as creative as I can be. And you can also choose to have it run under its own farm account. We recommend running every service under its own account so that each account has the least amount of privileges. So I'm going to go ahead and register a new account. I had already made an AD account called Project Server. Oops, wrong password. So we said project, sorry, the screen refreshed. We said I was going to call it project service. And it picked my project server as my Active Directory account that'll run it in the farm. Okay, there we go. So now we will see it. There's the project service. So, we also use a project service application to actually create our PWA instances. So I'm going to go ahead and create, if you remember the previous slide, I created a PWA site that was at the root, it was on the right side. I'm going to go ahead and create one. So I'm going to go sites. I'll be the owner, and I want to call my database PWA root. And I'm going to let this chug away. So it's going to take several minutes to provision out. What it's going to do in the background, it's going to create a project database. It's going to create all the project objects that we need, and it's going to link them together. And eventually we'll be able to navigate to my localhost /site/PWA, because that's what I'd entered. And as you can see here, I had my medical site previously created, so I'm going to quickly show you how to add PWA to an existing site. So I have a script here, which I'll explain quickly.
I forgot how hard this was. My demo is so much easier.
So I'm going to talk about the script quickly. It's available online. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have to manually create a project database. We have PowerShell's command to create a project database. I'm going to make my database called PWA Medical. It's going to be hooked up to the same project service application that I created. It's going to go on my local host, which is called Project Night. And I have to tag it, because later on when I update my medical site, I have to use the tag there to say, just so you know, I'm turning on PWA, link it to this database. So my site collection and my project database are all linked together. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and create a /PWA subweb on my medical site, and then run upgrade on it to make sure everything's set up in place. So I'll start doing this. Actually, I can't start doing it. I have to do one last thing. Start up a SharePoint PowerShell, paste, and let it run. So this probably will take 10 or 15 minutes. So like a cooking show, I am done.
Pulled it out of the oven.
Yes. So we have my medical site here. And now if I go to /PWA on it, you will see PWA is lit up. There's my projects, approvals, tasks. If I go to sites /PWA, you also see, it didn't even refresh, it was that fast, that you can see PWA set up here. So I've essentially, and if I want to show you guys that I made the two databases, you'll see that I made my PWA medical databases here, and I also have the PWA root database as well. So some people, I guess I should have asked the question, is anyone here running Project Server 2010, or do I say it earlier? Anything earlier? Okay, a good number of you. So in Project Server 2010, so as I showed you here, Project Server 2013 has one database. In Project Server 2010, we had 4 databases. Each database served a specific purpose. We had a draft, we had publishing, we had an archiving database, and we had a reporting database. So part of the work we did when you upgrade from 2010 to 2013 is we squished them all together into one database, and inside our main project database, there is 4 schemas representing those 4 original databases. So if you want to upgrade from Project 2010 to 2013, you're going to basically take your content database, those 4 databases, you're going to attach it to your brand new farm, which I just showed you guys how to build, and there will be some PowerShell commands that will take those 4 databases with the content database and suck it into one project database with the same content database. If you happen to run an earlier version of Project Server 2010, so let's just say 2007, the only way to get to Project Server 2013 is to build a Project Server 2010 farm. And you would have to go from 2007 to 2010, and then 2010, just as I described. You can easily build a Project Server 2010 farm just by using a VM. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, as long as, because you don't really need to keep anything running while you're doing that. Also, after you've upgraded, you have to publish all your projects so that the issues and tasks on all your project sites are updated. You can add any new EPTs, and there's one timer job that needs to be restarted. But otherwise, you can upgrade from 2010 to 2013 relatively easily. If you have any custom reports, you may have to refactor them out or make sure that you haven't been using any of the undocumented project schema, because we don't guarantee that won't change. The reporting schema would have relatively stayed the same. And even the name of the schema is still DBO, so all your reporting stuff should work in the new version.
So just, do you mind going to the mic, because I believe they're recording this session, and so we can capture the question? Thank you.
Can you follow the same
So
steps to merge
if
them?
you have two content databases, so like I said, there's one step I skipped. You got to take those 2010 databases and upgrade them to 2013 using SharePoint's methodology. So now they're 2013 content databases. And you would take your 4 project 2010 databases, back them up, restore them on the new farm, run the PowerShell command, which would make another database which has a copy of all 4 of those databases in it. So you have updated the content database using SharePoint's methodology, and you've updated the 4 project databases into one using our methodology. And then your site collection and your project PWA site has both been moved over to the new farm. So additional resources. So there's a couple links on here I want to call it. Deploy Project Server 2010 to a server farm environment. That's pretty much what I've covered here at a high level. There's a lot more details there and all additional hints and recommendations. Upgrade to Project Server 2013, which I will answer all your questions about upgrade. And plan for performance and capacity in Project Server 2013. There are a bunch of recommended for different, depending on your size of the data set or how many projects you have, how big they are. There's recommendations for what your topology should look at and how big it should be and what the power of your topology, the power of your server should be.
Awesome. So thank you, Nadine, for showing us how to get to Project Server. So we're just going to switch gears a bit. I'm going to kind of do the same kind of steps, and I'm going to show you how to do this in the online service. So another Walt Disney quote. Basically, I feel like this one resonates quite well with how we're quickly evolving our code base and starting to turn it really into a service. And you'll see that with continual releases of Project Server on-prem, that we'll take all the innovation that we are rapidly developing within our service and delivering it to IT pros. And there's a lot of excitement there, which unfortunately we're not quite ready to share with you guys. But it is, we're constantly focused on the future, and we're keep on pushing up change through our service. So I thought that was a good quote. So talking about a services world, there's kind of 2 options. What I'm going to describe today is Project Online, which is software as a service. What Nadine described was self-hosting. This is where you have the on-prem version and you maintain the entire stack. So you, right from the hardware, the OS, up the scale, right up to the application to maintain it. There is a middle tier that we do support, which is using like Azure VMs, so software or infrastructure as a service. You can take Project Server and you can put it onto an Azure VM. We typically recommend, if you read our capacity planning documentation that Nadine pointed out, that you kind of leave this more for a dev test kind of environment, not necessarily for a production environment, particularly if you go beyond multiple VMs. We're a little bit chatty between the tiers, and you might have some performance degradation. Now, we have software as a service, which is our Project Online offering, and you let us, the engineering team, maintain the hardware and the OS and patching and keeping everything up to date. I'm not quite sure why our slides keep advancing on us. So let's continue talking about Project Online. So I'm going to do a very similar demo that Nadine did, but this time we'll do it in the service. So if you already have an Office, I'm going to assume you already have an Office 365 tenant. Who here has an Office 365 tenant? Awesome. A good chunk of you have it. That's great to hear. So if you log in as a tenant administrator like I have here, and you have at least purchased one Project Online subscription, you'll be able to create PWA within your tenancy. So I'm clicking on admin. So the very easy step to do to get to the point where Nadine was with his demonstration is you go to your active users, and I'll just choose myself right now, admin, and you assign yourself a Project Online license, which I have here. So if I hadn't done it, I would be unchecked. I would just go ahead and check that checkbox. And then at that point, you would basically be at the step Nadine did, and you would have your PWA site. And you wouldn't have to do all those other steps Nadine did. But I'll show you how to create a second PWA site using the service. So if you wanted to create your own PWA site, we are part of SharePoint, so you go down here to Admin SharePoint, and you'll see all the site collections within your tenant. And you go ahead and click New, and you can say, create a site collection with PWA. So this is kind of very similar to the 2010 deployment, where we'll create a new site collection for you, and then put PWA as that root web. So to create my new PWA site, I can go My Project Ignite Site. And I go ahead and I just give it a URL, so PWA demo. And I set who the administrator will be, so admin. So this will become a site collection administrator. We have shipped just a recent change, so just going on a little sidetrack here. We used to have an issue in the service where admins used to inadvertently lock themselves out of PWA. Now we will always keep the administrator of the site collection and admin of PWA, so you don't need to call us if you accidentally lock yourself out. Glad to hear clapping. I'm glad we don't have to do that, because unfortunately when you guys accidentally locked yourselves out, we actually had to go fix it. And by we, I mean like we had to go fix it. So we got a phone call. So it got prioritized pretty quickly.
Gotta give it a different name.
Oh, I already used that name, so didn't use that name. And that goes ahead and that creates the PWA set. So that one screen does everything that Nadine did in terms of creating a new PWA site. So if you notice, it's off and it's doing the little circly thing, the same thing that was happening on Nadine's tenant, and he had to kind of do the bake-off thing. There's a couple other options that we do offer in tenant administration. I just want to make you aware of. So if you click this down, you can add. So if I didn't have PWA in my site collection, I can go ahead and add it here. And then the other option that we give you is the ability to set the permission mode. So in on-prem, you can only set the permission mode via PowerShell. Here we offer it in tenant administration. So by default, we ship in SharePoint permission mode. If your organization wants a little bit more flexibility at the cost of complexity, you can switch it off to project permission mode. And this is what allows you to get the dynamic rules and RBS and all that good stuff that we offer. So at this point, we're back and we have our Project Online PWA site. So a much simpler demo. So now you know why I chose that one. And that's what you get to do when you're the boss. A couple other things I just want to make sure you guys are aware of within the admin portal. We get a lot of questions about, hey, I have a service issue, or I had a service issue and I wasn't aware of it, or you guys made a change, and how do you communicate that change to users? So primarily, we do take advantage of the what we call the health dashboard. We are part of SharePoint, so if you click in on the details, you can always scroll down to Project Online, and thankfully, everything for Project Online is up and running over the last few days with no incident. And then the other important piece to be always aware of is our message center. So in the past, we haven't always been good at communicating change, and I apologize for that, but we are getting better and more disciplined. And this is a very important place for tenant admins to go and take a look at. And they get toast when new messages come in and are informed when these messages happen. Now, we do recognize that some organizations, the PWA admin isn't necessarily the tenant admin. But this is right now our only way to communicate. So if you're a PWA admin and not a tenant admin, make sure you have a good, buy him coffee or her a coffee, and make sure that they're, telling you about messages that are going up to the message center. Because this is where you'll learn about us starting to roll out new functionality, or if there was a service incident that you have to actually take action on. So,
for example, when we fix this, we'll call it a
Admin.
bug where an administrator can lock themselves out, we would have posted a message there so you'd become aware of this enhancement that the tenant admin now has access as a PWA administrator. So we would have posted there so you would know that we made that change.
So there's the message center that you really want to become familiar with. Then the second thing that you want to make sure you're familiar with is the Office 365 roadmap. This is where we kind of publish kind of bigger things that we're pushing out into the service. And this actually is for everything within Office 365. So you can learn about Exchange and Link and SharePoint and, of course, Project. So just because there's so much change happening, we'll do a quick search on Project. And what you can see is here we have quickly or recently launched 2 changes to all the tenancies, and this is now rolling through production. We'll touch on these tomorrow. So Jean, Donati, and I have a session around best practices and improving the performance of your tenant. And these 2 items directly apply to improving the performance of your workflows. And then you can also see what's in development. So this would have been a quick way to have a preview of our vision session of the last, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday, when Howard and Mike presented all the new upcoming features that we're presenting, or even what Jean was presenting in the last project session regarding resource engagements. I'm not sure if they covered this one. I know a lot of people are interested and have been asking for task notifications, which is currently on the on-prem product that's missing in the service. You'll notice that it's in development on our roadmap, and it's well on its way to hopefully hit production tenants in the June-July timeframe with some new UI. Okay, so Gary's asking, just for the recording, about will this require hosted Exchange? No, it will not. It will just work. So just like we can send mails through administration, we use our backdoor to pump out the change through the service. Okay, so let's hope I can do this part, because if this thing keeps on moving forward on us, it's not going to work very well. So I could present some boring slides to you, but instead I figured we'd do some trivia. And this is how you get shirts. Or pens, because I only have large shirts. So, I figured we'd just go through, because these are all, I think, important bullet points, and I kind of want to drive them home. And first question, and so we'll go from the top left, left to right, top down. Does anybody know how many databases the Project Online team maintains? So how many databases that we're maintaining in the service today? 1 database? Okay, and you have to go to your mic, because I'm not going to know who's going to give the shirt to. So you got to run to a mic, and you got to tell me how many project databases we're currently running in the service for a T-shirt. Nope.
Oh, so it doesn't matter. It's just managed in online services team.
Well, that is true, but that doesn't. We still have, how many do we maintain? Because it matters to us a lot.
10,000?
No, lower.
5,000.
Lower.
2.
Lower.
1.
Lower. Whoever said 0 gets the T-shirt. Though you didn't go to the mic. So the correct answer is 0. When we shipped Project 2013, just as Nadine showed you, there was a project database, which meant We used to have databases. We used to have thousands of databases. We actually shipped thousands upon thousands of changes over the last year. So I know we occasionally mess up and we change some UI. But to give you the scope, we have changed the entire storage system of Project. And we did it all under the hood with zero escalations, zero incidents. Not only did we change the entire under the hood of the storage, we moved every existing tenant at the time into the Content DB. So next release, when you get to install Project Server vNext, you'll notice that our diagrams become a lot simpler. We went from 4-to-1 databases to 0 databases because now we're just part of the content database. And the great thing is, Project Online, we no longer worry about databases in our service. So, next question. What is the version number of Project 2013? So this is the version.
Go to the mic.
Gotta go to the mic. So that way you get a shirt or a pen.
That is a trick question because you aren't specifying if it's Project Pro or Project Server.
So it's not a trick question because they're the same version number. So
15.
Sorry?
15.
That is
Shirt or
correct.
pen?
P15. Might as well just grab a bunch of shirts while you're going down there. So internally we call it P15. So guess what version number it is if you're running in Project Online?
I only have one size.
Gotta go to a mic, guys. I only have one shirt. 16 in the back right. So that is correct. So our Project Online service is running at the very edge. It is basically your tenants are yesterday's build. So if you're always wondering, when you see resource engagements, for example, if you're running in the online service, resource engagements are already sitting in your tenant. The storage is already there. The functionality is ready to go. But since we're not quite finished with it, we have it hidden. So when we're ready, we'll turn it on. But there won't be this big upgrade to get to the next version. One day we'll just say, yep, we're done with resource engagements, and the on switch comes on and the functionality lights up. But all the bits are there, the storage is there, the database structures are there already because we're on the latest build. So next question, how often, I kind of gave this question away, so this will be easy. How often do we upgrade your tenant? So this question comes up a lot because I get a lot of feedback that says, hey Chris, can you tell me, actually Mark asks this all the time, when is my tenant being upgraded? So got to go to the mic to get the answer.
Monthly.
Not monthly. Got to go to a mic. Who wants a t-shirt?
Daily?
You are correct. So we are daily upgrading all your tenants. We're constantly pushing out those changes. Next question.
Pen or shirt?
How many, by default, how many PWA instances can you create?
7.
7, correct. It used to be 3. But today it is 7 PWA instances that you can create. So the one important point that I want to drive home here is we do this to manage capacity. If your organization, you've already seen these answers, Andre. Did this at the MVP summit. If you can answer though. You can answer. If you need more than 7, don't let that be a stopping factor. We do this to manage capacity across all our demo tenants and all that good stuff. So it's a very simple call to support. It gets escalated very easily. Surprisingly, if you just say, hey, I'm an organization, I have Project Online, I need more than 7, it's fairly easy to get more. And we've upped it considerably for some organizations. So, Andre, how much storage do you get per PWA instance?
10 giga.
You are correct. Why is my thing not going? 10 gigabytes. Similar to the PWA instances, though, we do control this number. So if you do have a larger production instance that does require more space, again, let us know. We can up that. Again, we're just managing storage at this point. We don't want to have a bunch of free trials expand in size. And there's no cost to getting it increased. So I should have mentioned that with the instances. We don't charge any kind of difference in terms of the number of PWA instances you have or the amount of storage. There is a limit, because we are constrained by the SharePoint Content DB, which I believe is currently 100 gigabytes, but I could be wrong. Unfortunately, though, that's not a question, so you can't get a shirt. What is our financially backed uptime guarantee?
99.9.
You are correct. So similar to all the other Office 365 services, we are backed by the 99.9% guarantee. So if you do have a major service outage, you get to call us, I guess, for a refund, which is sad. Next question. So you're an admin, you have an issue, or you want to learn about an issue. Where do you go to learn about the issue? You got to go to a mic to get the shirt.
Project Service
Message
queue.
center.
Right, Message Center.
What would you like?
Is Project Online FedRAMP compliant?
I was going to guess no.
That was kind of a loaded question there. So we just recently got our FedRAMP goodness. So I believe you guys get a copy of the deck. This link goes directly to the Fed site. I want to be careful that I don't click the forward button, but I'll click it in a second. And where do you learn about big new feature update? You already have a shirt. You don't get two shirts.
365 roadmap.
Roadmap. Well, you both said roadmap, and I think we have enough extra T-shirts, so you both can have a T-shirt.
Unless you want a pen.
And there we go. So if you're wondering, there's our FedRAMP compliance. So that's on the government site, so fedramp.gov. The link is directly from the slide deck. If you download it, it's part of the Office 365 multi-tenancy compliant thingy-majig. I know they have an official name, and I'm not using the right name. So in terms of compliancy, so FedRAMP is one of the hardest ones to get. It encompasses a bunch of others. Since we have extra shirts, I guess I miscounted on how many boxes I have. If you want to figure out, hey, what compliant standards we conform to, does anybody know what website you go to learn about which compliant No more excitement for shirts? Trying to keep you guys awake after lunch on an admin
Is
set.
it SAAS?
Nope. Nope. This is our website. It's our website. That makes sense. You might be able to get it from there.
Office Trust Center?
Yes, the Office 365 Trust Center, but we'll give it to you. It's close enough. Close enough. Okay.
A pen or a shirt? You sure?
And unfortunately, I don't have any other questions, though we have shirts. So we'll maybe save the rest of the shirts for people who ask good questions at the end of our session. And let me switch back to the slide deck. Okay, so additional resources for Project Online. We have our software boundaries and limits. So we went over quite a few of those already through the trivia. And then a couple others around getting your Office 365 with the Project Online subscription, and then adding Project Online to a site collection, which was my demo earlier. And at this point, I will switch back and let Nadine go back to first steps in connecting PWA.
So now that I finished running around handing out T-shirts and doing all the hard work, we're going to cover 5 steps on what to do once you have your PWA site. The first thing will be setting up a resource pool sync. So as I mentioned earlier, PWA will hold all the resources that you want to sort of create a group of, so that when you assign tasks to various people between different projects, you have a good idea that that resource is available or that resource is already booked on a specific task. I'm going to cover creating custom fields. I'll explain these as I go through it, but creating a project, how to share a project, and how to set up timesheet periods. So if we go back to Chris's demo. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up we have an Active Directory. So if we go to the admin site in Office 365, and obviously your own Active Directory internally, you will see groups. And so you can create as many groups as you want. You can add people and remove them from the group. And what we will do is we will suck in those people and make them resources. So I'll go to PWA settings.
Oh, yeah.
Is that good? Bigger? Is that good? Awesome. Okay. Active Directory resource pool. So this page looks exactly the same as on-prem and online.
Yeah.
So
I
I'm
would say the important point now is we've brought you both project server and project line steps. So on-prem and online, this applies to both at this point.
So because I want everyone in my company to do work, I have an all employees group. That's the only group I want to synchronize, and now save and synchronize now. So it's going to take all those users that are in the OWL employees group and suck them in to become resources in project, and it'll periodically refresh so that if the IT administrator or the tenant admin hires new people and puts them in that group, the project manager can automatically go out and assign them as soon as the sync occurs.
Ooh, I have a question. For a t-shirt, does anybody know when that gets updated? Nope. It's a hard question, though. Nope. It's probably too hard. It's actually a window. So we do actually look based on where your pool is. We look at and measure how busy the activity is for your data center, and we have about a 4-hour window that typically happens in the middle of the night. So I get the shirt. It's too hard of a question. I shouldn't make questions up on the fly, but now I'll take the shirt and put it down.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is create a custom field. So just a bit of background on what a custom field is used for. So we have 3 types of custom fields. You can add a custom field to a project, you can add a custom field to a task, and you can add a custom field to a resource. Custom fields allow you to mark up or add properties to these 3 types of objects, which can be used for reporting, which can be used for workflow. So if you think about it, an example could be is that you want all your projects to have a size or a scope. And so maybe you want to know that when someone creates a project, is the scope like a one-person project? Is it scoped at the team? Is it scoped at a department? Or is it actually just scoped at an organization level? And when you have these custom fields, they're actually made available in our reporting database. And so, or if you're online, it uses OData. And so you can actually, when you look at projects, you can see what these custom fields are, and then you can actually build reports saying, give me all the projects that are individual, or get all the ones that are across organization, and that gives you the ability to report and tag projects the way you need to tag them for your own dashboards and reporting needs. So the other thing you can do is a custom field can be number, plain text. You can also hook a link, a custom field to a lookup table. So this ensures that whenever someone's modifying a custom field for a project or a task or a resource, they're forced to choose within a specific list. So that makes running your reporting much easier to do if, for example, individual, team, department, organization, like if I only allow those 4 options, it becomes much easier to reporting. You're not going to have people sit in their free-forming departments, some people using acronyms, some people not filling it in, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and create a lookup table. And since I was talking about scope, I'll call my lookup table scopes. It's going to hold text. I'm going to give a couple of options. Oops. So the first one is going to be individual. I'm going to make one for the team, make one for the department, and an organization one. You have options of making, this is scope, so I apologize. So I made my scope. So now that I have a scope, I want to create a new custom project field. I'm going to call this scope singular. Defines how large the project is expected to be. I'm going to associate with the project. It's going to hold a text value. And I'm going to say I want it to be from the scopes field. No, I don't care about the defaults right now, and I'm going to go ahead and save. So if I ever edit a project, I should now see the option of scope, and I can actually then choose what I want it to be. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a project, and then we'll try to set the scope.
So one thing, to note is when you create the lookup table, it kind of forces users to consistently choose the option, which really is helpful when you go ahead and start to build reports. All the spelling's the same way, especially for people in organizations like me who don't know how to spell. It drives consistent naming to drive your reports off of.
So just before I create the project, as I showed earlier in my slides, in our slides, when you created a project site was created by default. Not everyone uses that feature, so by default it's currently off. So I'm going to first turn that feature on so that when I create a project, I want my project site to be created with it. So to turn that feature on, if it's something your organization needs, you go to Connected SharePoint Sites, you go to Settings, and when a project is first published, I want the project site to be created in my organization. You also have the ability to say, let the user choose. The PM who creates the project might care about project sites, they may not, and you can give them the option as well. So I'm going to say, create it automatically.
Yeah. And just a plug for our session tomorrow, we're going to show something brand new, which allows you in your workflow to create the project site at a different stage, so you can do it at a later point in time. So tomorrow afternoon at 5 o'clock.
So our team is actually moving offices as we speak. Today's the 6th, yeah, or 7th. So 6th, they're moving offices. So let's just say I wanted to plan that move. So I'm going to create a new project. And I'm going to call my project Office Move. It's starting today, and if you don't define the owner will be the person creating it, so that's good. That'll be me. So I'll go ahead and create my project.
So at this point, we're doing a bunch of heavy lifting. We're creating out the full project plan, we're creating the project site, setting up all the PDPs, and now it's done.
So one of the default PDPs out of the box is the project details. And as you can see now, one of the default out of the box fields we have is project departments, but then we also have this one here called scope. It defines how large a project is expected to be. So since it's just my team that's moving, I'm going to choose team. So now if I were to go to reporting database, I can go look at the project and I would actually see the scope called team associated with my project. And now that I'm done creating the project, I need people to be able, I don't want to share with a couple people so they can have access to the project site. So I'm going to go ahead and share it. I'm going to share it with Alex, who I guess is our marketing assistant. I should have picked a better name. I don't want to send the email, and I'm going to give him team member access. This will give Alex team member access to the project so he can sit there now, look at the tasks, and interact with the project. I'm also going to go to the project site.
Sorry. Mark, you have a question? Right. So the question, just for the recording, is, does Alex need a license to do the sharing? And our marketing guys probably don't want me to say this, especially in a recording. Yes, you need the license because that's the right thing to do. It's not licensed in Force though, so they will get access. So for the project site, when they go to PWA, they will get a license denied error message. But for the project site, they would have access, but they should have a license to be compliant.
So I've given
and for the recording, yeah. Wait, I don't want to record that I put that in quotes.
So I want to clarify that I gave Alex access to the team view in PWA. I also want to give him access to the project site so that he can sit there and collaborate, makes issues and risks, upload documents. So I'll give him access to it. I'll give him contribute access so he can go ahead and make changes and upload documents. So now Alex will have access to the project site called Office Move. One of the last things I want to show is timesheets. So I want my organization to fill in timesheets because I want to know what they're working on and also use that to help report statusing. So I'm going to make the timesheet link visible. It'll show up on the left side. So when I click on timesheet, since I haven't defined anything yet, I'll get a nice friendly error message saying it can't tell me what timesheet period I want to see. I either have to, it hasn't been created yet, and to pick a different date. So I'm going to go ahead and create them. So I'm going to go back to PWA settings, timesheet reporting periods. And there's none here. So I'm going to say I want to create 52 timesheet periods. I want it to start on a Sunday. They're going to be 7 days long. And for reporting, I want to give the timesheet something friendly so that it makes sense. So I'm going to say week, something nice and simple. So it gives me a sample here that when I create them, they'll be week 1, week 2, so on and so forth. And I create in bulk. A few seconds later, I'll have all my timesheet periods available. I can still go here and edit them if I didn't like the way it looked, or if I wanted to do something else. I can also manually create a few before, after, in between. But now my timesheets have been created. Timesheet periods, have been created. And now if I go to timesheets, I have the ability to add a timesheet. I don't know why it doesn't show up. I don't know why I can't enter anything else in right now.
I wasn't paying attention what you were doing.
So I don't remember. Okay, well, I'll skip over this part. I apologize. I don't remember.
So at this point, I think we got everything basically set up, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we got you Project Server on-prem installed and set up. We got you Project Online configured and running with PWA. And then we walked you through kind of the first basic steps around configuring PWA for your organization. So basic custom field configuration, creating projects, setting up your enterprise resource pool. We should go back and show them that the enterprise resource pool got populated in Resource Center, just as proof. And setting up timesheets. So there you go. All company is set up. So we're only running 2 minutes ahead of schedule. Gives us 2 minutes more for questions and opportunities for shirts and pens. But for the last 15 minutes, we're here to answer questions. Please use the mic so they get captured on the recording.
Do you know if it is planned to fix the OData issue with reports for Project Server 2013 on-prem, not refreshing out of the box?
So OData not refreshing.
Yeah. When you start up Project Server 2013, OData reports do not refresh initially. It's been an issue for about 1.5 years.
We should are you using Excel services?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were saying that the OData was going stale. I am not aware of any work going on right now in that space, primarily because we still see a lot of our on-prem customers using the reporting database directly. So,
Okay. Thanks.
you can get a shirt if you want a shirt. You already got a shirt. You can get a pen. So, next.
My question's in respect to on-premises topologies. And can you comment about cross-farm services support? For instance, my secure store exists in a separate services farm. Do I need to create a local instance of it in the same farm where I build the PWA?
So we don't use Secure Store as part of our product.
Thought I saw it on
It's one of the dependencies, but we depend on SharePoint for
All
all
right, so I don't need an instance of it locally with the PWA farm.
No. I think that was just illustrative of
Okay.
the diagram that you have these application services running in the farm.
Okay. And as a follow-on, when I build this PWA farm, that's the farm where I have to put the shared the service application, correct?
Yes.
Correct. So the service app needs to be in the same. We don't do the
No cross-farm
federated
services.
farm services. So,
Okay.
do you want a shirt or a pen?
Next question.
Are you aware whether you guys do something about the site collection limitation on project sites in Project Online, which is currently a limit of 500?
The limit of
500 project sites?
The limit is 2,000
Oh, okay.
number of project sites because we restrict in the online service the number of sites to the site collection.
Yeah.
And I'll shove my brother-ins under the bus. SharePoint has the 2,000 limitation. If that is a constraining factor,
Yeah.
it's similar to our 7 PWA instance limit.
So we can request more?
Yeah, we typically allow people to go up to 5,000.
Okay.
The reason why we ask to call support is because, particularly with this issue, SharePoint put that limitation in for a good reason, and we just want to have the conversation around how you're structuring those sites and how you're using those sites so that you don't end up putting your users in a degraded performance experience.
Fair enough.
So, but we have some wiggle room there, and we're very aware that it is a very painful issue for some organizations. So
Well, and quite often for larger organizations, it's actually a reason not to move into the online space because 500, or even 2,000 projects is not uncommon for large organizations.
yeah, no, that's true. And so there's a couple of things I do want to point out there too. You'll notice that we shipped a change, which we did quickly demo in the service. Got my screen up. So Nadine quickly showed you how to turn on the connected SharePoint sites. So this actually isn't in the on-prem product; it's in the service. This dialogue, this will ship in the next version of Project Server. But what we allow you to, and it is in some of these options are in central admin today and on-prem, but we allow you to turn off the creation of the site, and then we allow you now in the workflows for a given EPT to choose when to create the site, which allows you for some EPTs where it's needed to create the site so that you can keep below the limit, but yet then get more projects.
Yeah, that would have been my feedback. This should have been on an EPD level, not on a site.
Yeah, we're aware of that. We just, this was the first version. The nice thing about the service is we can keep changing
Yeah,
it.
and
but-
workflow is possible. That's it.
Yes, yeah, so we open that up. If you want a shirt or a pen, feel free to come up to the
What
front.
would you like?
Security question for you.
Sure.
Are you going to be doing inheriting permissions? So I've got online PWA under sites, and I have all my other projects underneath there. I want to be able to have people inherit read rights, so for all of my project managers to see everything, it's not inheriting downstream.
Right.
Currently.
So you're my perfect user. What you want to do is disable, so are you in SharePoint permission mode or project mode? Do you know?
Not sure.
Okay. So you need to switch into project permission mode.
Okay.
And then what you can do is you can turn off what we call WSS, we call internally WSS user sync. Let me look up what the external name of this is. Oh, fortunately this is not in project permission mode. What you want to do is turn off user sync for the project sites. When you're in project permission mode, you'll see the option to do that in this UI to turn off user sync. Once you turn off user sync, which will actually have some significant performance benefits when you're creating projects in PDPs. So that's why there's a great benefit to this, but the other side effect is you'll get what you want, the desired effect, where you let your folks manage the project sites within SharePoint, the security of it, and you can turn inheritance off, or turn inheritance back on, sorry, and we won't come in with user sync, turn it off on you and update the users.
Bad side to disabling user sync?
Sorry?
Oh, sorry. Bad side to turning off the user sync?
The bad side of it. A lot of organizations like the ability for project managers to easily share their site. So user sync, if it's enabled, you can, you create your project. When you build team, so you build team for that project, whoever's on the team, I believe, gets viewer permissions on the project site. If you then assign a resource to a task, they're able to do, I think, contributor actions within the site, and so on and so forth. So it allows your project managers not to think about SharePoint security, and allows the sharing of the sites to flow a little bit more.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks. You can get, I don't know who's next,
It's
sorry.
large only.
All right.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Our organization's still sitting on 2010 across the full board, specifically Exchange and Project, and we're also a SAP-based company as well. I was curious with moving to 2013, one of the things we have problems with is getting people to do task updates, and so they're getting them sent to them via Outlook, but if they move it there, it's not talking back to Project at all. I'm not sure if that's a setup problem or not. And moreover, of course, that we don't have the connection set to SAP to record against something in Project systems. Does 2013, at least on the Microsoft side, make that, does it complete those hooks so that if I send a task to somebody via, and they receive it in their Outlook, they're marking their completion, their percentages and such, is that going to be an active hook so that I can actually send that back and update Project without having the people go through 2, if not 3 in our case, because of SAP?
Right, so SAP, we don't build a connector for.
Okay.
We do have a lot of partners that do build connectors for it, and I don't know what their version matrix is to support that.
Okay.
So I'm not. So the best thing I would have to do is point you to a partner for SAP.
Okay.
In terms of Exchange, you need to match, if I remember correctly, the Exchange server with the Project server.
Okay.
So we do have support between 2010 and Exchange and Project, and then 2013 in both.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah. How do you migrate the content from on-premise Project server to the Project Online? And if you have any tools to do that?
That is a very common question. There's kind of 2 options. You can automate WinProj to do it, and it's a little bit painful. And then the second option is, and I don't know if Fluent Pro is still here, but I'll give a call out. So Fluent Pro, which I believe has a booth, has a tool that allows you to take data from on-prem and push it into the cloud.
Okay. Sorry, which tool is that?
Fluent Pro?
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Mark? Yeah. So Mark raises a good point, and just for the recording, I'll repeat it, is that there's 2 tools to get the content and the configuration to the cloud. And I actually wasn't aware of that. I thought it was always one tool, so it's good to know.
Do you have a recommended topology for supporting remote Project Pro users?
Yeah, Project Online.
Yeah, I know. We're not there yet. We've got some SAP integration that's causing some issues with moving it to the cloud. But
Okay.
So right now we're not doing it the most secure method, and so we'd like to put it in the DMZ, but without having a domain joined instance in the DMZ.
So I honestly probably am not the best person to answer that question. And
can you guide me to where I might get some?
I would probably
topology?
chat with SharePoint folks.
Yeah.
They might look at you and go project, go talk to the project folks.
I've heard this story
So
before.
what I would say to them is, hey, and just say, hey, don't worry about project. Just think about the rest of the Office apps. We all talk over the web services. So how do you make that a secure?
We're like a
connection?
heavy add-on of a site collection. So if they tell you whatever the answer for the site collection, it should more or less apply to us.
So yeah, because they'll own that kind of scenario. But if they give you that kind of runaround, just say, no, it runs over web services just like Word and Excel. So.
Early on in Project Online, I had somebody create a test environment, and they had synced a group, and they were getting like multiple user accounts in the resource pool. This was test data, very small and things like that. They were coming to me to troubleshoot, but it just didn't go anywhere. So my question is there any gotchas with when you're using Project Online and setting up the resource pool sync and users so that something like that doesn't happen? Even the accounts themselves were coming in sort of like last name first and first name swap. So there was distinctly 2 different versions of someone.
I see. I haven't seen that issue. I know there's a lot of experts in this room that may have seen that particular issue that maybe you can, I don't know if anyone, I'm not seeing any nods from any familiar faces.
You guys ran into that?
So.
Okay.
What was happening was they were saying the Office 365 IDs, they kept My question is, if I keep Exchange on-prem, can I, and I use Project Online, can the tasks that are from Project be sent to their on-prem Exchange, and when they complete the task, will that filter back up to Project Online?
Yeah, good question. I don't have the best answer here. And I'll go to Message Center, because Message Center has the answer for you. And that is, we've currently deprecated that piece of functionality in the service. So actually the answer is no. It's the short answer. So.
Thank you.
TBD. We understand. So the question was, what are we going to replace the functionality in terms of aggregated tasks in Exchange? And the answer I can only give you is TBD. We understand the scenario. We understand this scenario is very important for a lot of users. So we're thinking hard about it, but nothing to say right now.
Hi. Do you have any plans to bring the project server backups into Project Online so that we could do an administrative restore for projects?
That one gets asked more than this one, if that gives you any hint. So nothing to announce today, but we appreciate the feedback. And I should say, I do think Fluent Pro has a tool for you too. I should go work for Fluent Pro or get kickbacks.
You're working on a backup option because I'm wondering about, do you have a backup option? Because I'm wondering about retiring and removing old projects so I don't have the clutter on my dashboards.
Right. So I just actually want to step back. I'll answer your question because that's a great question, but I do want to step back a little bit and just make sure it's clear to everyone. We do backups and data recovery for the PWA instance. I don't want anyone to leave the room with the impression that we don't have like enterprise grade service reliability. We definitely back up everything. We can restore everything up to 15 days. So if you do run into a problem, we can revert your site back. It's about a 15-day window, so call us quickly. The question, I believe, was more around what we have on-prem where you can do the project entity level backup that we don't offer. So your question around archiving, typically organizations don't use the backup as a mechanism to do that, mostly because they want to have that data still reside in their reporting store. And it is a common feature asked to figure out how to close or cancel out projects. But our current guidance, or my personal guidance there to get around that, is to create a service account, create a security category, deny everything in that security category, dump your closed projects into that security category. And that has the benefits that what you desire, which is it hides them all from the PWA views. It then also keeps it what a lot of other organizations want. It keeps it in the reporting store for kind of analysis. And then it actually has a really good third benefit. The way that Project Server and Project Online is written, our SQL queries to retrieve data are optimized on the security. So we optimize very quickly on a deny and get that filtered out very quickly. So you'll actually see improved performance by taking those archived projects into a denied security category. So I'm gonna, Mike, sorry.
I'm at the micro, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mike wins. Are we out of pens, Nadine?
Got 3 more.
3 more pens.
Okay. Is this option to share only for the SharePoint mode, or it's available for both security modes?
Sorry, to share? Or?
The share site, can you go back?
Oh, the shared site. Yeah. So that is actually a piece of SharePoint tech. We don't own that. So that's available in both. The only difference is that in SharePoint permission mode, we take actions when you put particular members into a group. And we have our specified groups, like the team member, PWA.
So if I'm using the project server mode, that doesn't work for anything.
Yeah, and which is kind of by design. What you're saying, SharePoint permission mode is manage everything through SharePoint and the SharePoint UI from the project perspective, the project switch. So one last question, because I'm over and I'm going to get kicked out.
Short question with regard to the workflow engines. Are there any improvements to come? For example, having just SharePoint site workflows, but actions that integrate with Project Online or Project Server if you are on-prem?
So for workflow, we're not doing too much, though we're not the team that owns it. We are delivering a couple new pieces of tech, which we'll show off in tomorrow's session at 5 o'clock, which allows you to create the project site at a later stage. And there's some great perf benefits to doing that. And then also bulk updating project custom fields, which has been fairly painful for users. So awesome. I will be up at the booth if you have further questions. I do have to run to the booth, but I'm happy to answer further questions at the booth. And thanks, guys.